So if you're a filmmaker like me, you know a lot of people, including myself, really enjoy using video monitors or video recorders. Well, today we are going to take a look at this. This is the Shimbal Memory 1. It is a really fun, small monitor that reminds me a bit of the Atomos Ninja, Shinobi, stuff like that. And if you've used those items, you know that is a compliment because this is almost or just as good in a lot of ways, and it is significantly cheaper than both, coming in at $239. And if that wasn't enough, it also has the ability to record into the monitor as well. Let's put this on my GH6, my S5, and see how this works with my Lumix cameras and see how it stacks up against kind of the big names in monitors. So let's get into it. So as always, guys, be sure to use the chapters if you want to skip around, but in my mind, everything's important. We're going to talk about recording features that are built in, the build quality, and then go into reviewing the monitoring features themselves, which is probably what I'm going to be using this thing for the most. And then later on, I'll compare it to the old reliable Shinobi and see how it really stacks up against a monitor in a similar price bracket. But again, this monitor is just a little bit cheaper, so it's not the cheapest monitor you can get, but man, this thing, it really feels like this thing should be a lot more than it is. But of course, the Shinobi is just a monitor, and this is a monitor and recorder. So let's talk about the recording features it has and what you might use it for. So I compared it to the Ninja series, but it really isn't in the same class of like a dedicated high quality recorder. It's FAT32, which will break up your files. It's only 1080p, goes up to 60, I believe, and you know, I wouldn't really record anything that needs like a ton of grading or super high quality or super high bit rates. I think you get like 6 hours from a 64 gigabyte card at the highest bit rates, and yeah, it's a pretty decent looking 1080p, but you know, I mean, I think you'll know what you need this recording for if you need it at all. So personally, I see the recording as a bit of a bonus add-on to a super solid monitor, not necessarily like a super pro feature compared to like the Ninja, which again, the Ninja's like $400 or $500 and this is $240. So yeah, the fact that this has any kind of recording features is pretty cool. But again, it's kind of like a, you know, set it and forget it, leave on recording all the time sort of thing, or a long form recording sort of thing, or maybe just a backup in case you want to record internally in the camera and on the monitor at the same time. Okay, I can see a lot of combinations. For me, doing YouTube, it's particularly fun to just like, you know, record the screen of your camera to get your settings and show interfaces and things like that. So that's not really an ability I had before, and I'm sure you can see a ton of my old videos just recording the back of the screen. And so now that I have this, that is going to be a really fun feature I'm going to use all the time. But long story short, I see a lot of potential coming out of this thing for some video recording situations. But you know what? Actually, you guys comment down below, and what would you guys kind of use this thing for? What's the ideal use case for the recording features in this monitor? So let's rewind the clock a little bit and look at the build quality and unboxing, as well as some of the physical features I think are the most important. It is a really cool pair of scissors that if you work on sets, I definitely recommend. Here we go. Oh, ay, ay, ay. Wow. Sealed for freshness. Let's see. Some papers fell out. So try to peel this up, and here's what we've got. So we've got the monitor, some kind of mount, some kind of cable, one of these things. Mine has an SD card already in it. Nice 32 gigabyte one. Okay. Nice. Oh, we got to do it. Are you guys ready? Is everybody ready? Was it good? So yeah, my first impressions were pretty good with the build quality. I really like how it comes with, of course, the manual and the monitor, but you also get the screen protector, you get an HDMI cable, a SD card, and a hot shoe mount to mount it to your camera. So you pretty much have everything you need except for the NPF battery itself to get going pretty much right away, which I always appreciate. As far as the build quality itself, I appreciate the size. It's a 5.5 inch screen. The whole thing's pretty small, built out of aluminum. Takes the classic NPF style batteries, as you can see. It's got an HDMI in and out right next to the DC power. And on top, you've got, of course, the power button itself, but 3 custom buttons, which I don't see a lot on monitors like this. On the side, we've got another mounting point and headphones, as well as a curious SD card for the recording we talked about earlier, which is really cool, and a bunch of vents for fans and things like that. The USB-C on the bottom, I believe, is just for software updates and firmware updates, but it is what it is. I do think the mounting option that comes included is pretty decent, and the whole thing balances and assembles really quickly and really well on my GH6 or other Panasonic cameras. Even with the bigger or like medium-sized NPF batteries, it's a nice little package that is really simple and stripped down for more run and gun stuff where you still want a decent monitor or recorder. So let's finally get down to how I'm going to be using the Shimbal Memory One the most as an on-camera monitor. First, the actual specs. It's a 1080p monitor, which is awesome. 5.5 inches, which is, again, perfect for me. For shoulder rigs and first AC stuff, maybe 7 inches is better, but anything in that 5 to 6 inch range is nice. And yeah, it's nice that you get that extra 5.5 inches. A lot of monitors are 5 inches and smaller, especially in this price range. So I think a full HD, really sharp 5.5 inch monitor is great. It's aluminum and that's not too heavy for the handheld work I really like to do, which is great. This thing is also bright. It's 2000 nits, I think, or 2000 CD/M squared, but I think it's the same thing. And you get a really good clear picture even on like bright sunny days. The GH6's screen is great. I love the tilty, I love the brightness. It's good for an on-camera screen, but let's be honest, it's just a little bit small. It's even smaller than the GH5, and so going from 3 inches to 5.5, it's almost double the size, and I'd say it's easily double the brightness too. So yeah, as good as the GH6 monitor is, there's really nothing quite like an on-camera monitor to really just check that focus, check the exposure, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a huge step up from most, if not all, on-camera built-in monitors, and that's no surprise. So let's go over some of the assist and other features packed inside this thing. So this monitor does take a second to turn on, but once you're there, you're greeted with the main screen here. You've got your incoming resolution on one corner, batteries in the other, and your SD card confirmation on the side. And at the bottom, you've got everything else here. You've got scopes at the far left, which, waveform, histogram, vector scope, all that sort of thing, and an opacity adjustment. Next is what they call the marker menu, which, your grids, your anamorphic stuff, your safety areas, and all the colors and everything contained within are here. After that is going to be the focus menu. We've got basically just peaking and zoom in here, as well as the peaking color, sensitivity, and all that good stuff. The zoom on this is a pinch to zoom instead of just like a punch in, so whether you enjoy that or a straight punch in is kind of up to you. Moving on, we've got the exposure menu next, which is your zebras, your false color, which is one of the few things the GH6 doesn't have built in, and a monochrome mode, which has just like normal 3 or 4 colors that you can choose from. Although I did notice an issue where if you're in monochromatic mode, even the focus peaking isn't monochromatic, which I wish there was an option for that, or maybe that's something that they can mess with in the firmware. Next, there's a menu for your 3D LUT, your gamma curve, your color temperature, your HDR. I didn't have a big opportunity to play around with this that much, just because, well, for one, the GH6 already lets you apply LUTs in camera, and I just send the LUTs through HDMI, but if your camera can't do that, that could be nice. And lastly here, we've got our video recording settings, your mode, whether it's user triggered or camera triggered or whatever. your definition, LTHQ and XQ, which is low to high, and your file naming structure, which I don't really use. I just kind of leave it on default, but hey, it's there if you're doing some more higher end or professional work that requires that workflow. And then after that, you've got your gear with your settings. So display, RGB, setting, we've got your backlight and volume and fans and everything. You can also do your function 1, 2, and 3 reassigning here for your custom function buttons. I've got mine set to zoom, peaking, and waveform, the 3 things I use the most probably. There is that HDMI issue on the GH6 where you can only really display your settings in the camera or on the monitor, and you can't mirror it like you could in previous cameras. That's an issue that I think Panasonic really needs to iron out. So, I mean, this thing doesn't magically solve that issue. That's not an issue specifically to this. It happens with any monitor on the GH6. But one thing that I thought was really good compared to like the S5 or the S5 Mark II is the monitor latency, which is really solid on the GH6. Now, here's a quick tip for you. You have to turn off HDMI audio output, which could mess with your recording. So, you know, that could, if you aren't sending audio to this, I don't think it obviously is going to record it. But if you just use this as a monitor, turn the HDMI audio off, and your latency is going to be really good with this thing. Now let's compare this thing to Atomos or Atomos. Not the Ninja, since it's like $400 or $500 compared to like the $240 of the Shimbal. No, I want to compare the Shimbal Memory 1 to the Shinobi from Atomos, since they're within $100 of each other at $239 versus $299. So let's get into the specs real quickly. Shimbal is 5.5 inches versus the 5-inch screen, which isn't a huge difference, but technically it's a win for the Memory 1. The Shimbal is also 2000 nits over the Shinobi's 1000, which I think really does make a big difference in the brighter day situations. The Shinobi is really good, but in the bright direct sunlight is where I find it even just a little bit darker than I would want, and the Shimbal really is just that step up. They're both, of course, full HD 1080p displays, which is not a given with these monitors of this price, but they both look really nice when set to 1080 and 4K. I think the Shimbal has a little bit more moire and pixel, edges going on, set to the highest recording qualities of the GH6, but it doesn't really bother me. I'd rather have that than a soft image, to be honest. One thing I never really liked about the Shinobi was just the input on the HDMI, whereas the Memory 1 has the input and output, which is really nice for like wireless signals or, a lot of reasons. I think it's just better to have it than to not. Another thing that is kind of take it or leave it is the mounting. Shinobi has one on the bottom and on top, whereas the Shimbal goes for the sort of top and side, which could be good if you're going to do a lot of like vertical video or, you want to mount it in different ways. Of course, you can get a cage for this, but the Shinobi, but that's an extra purchase, extra options, and extra weight. So personally, the mounting options, I think I prefer this for just the flexibility, but your mileage may vary. I think it's a toss-up, really, personal preference. I think for me, the biggest upgrade here on the Shimbal actually is the custom buttons here. Like, I just really like physical buttons. I don't like to be locked down to just like the single physical button on the Atomos, which isn't even programmable. I mean, it's a lock button, which is fine, but I really just like the custom buttons, being able to set them. They even take a note from Panasonic, and if you hold the button down, it'll be reassigned, which we might have talked about earlier, but I just want to reiterate how cool that is to have physical buttons on a monitor, especially, again, I can't stress it enough at this price point. It's really fun to just like toggle on the zebra, toggle on the false color, things like that. Although I think the Shinobi might have slightly better menus depending on your use case, of course. Just because everything's laid out right there, you can toggle them on and off really easily. You don't have to navigate through menus. All the options for monitoring never really, block your view of the actual monitor and what you're trying to see, which is great. On the other hand, the Memory 1 here has very tidy menus with, all of the individual features like we talked about earlier. So again, I think that's just going to be a personal preference thing. Do you want all those symbols on the Shinobi, which you may or may not know what they do, or you might have to turn them on and off, in the moment because you're not sure which one is which. Or do you want to maybe block part of the view of your monitor with the memory one here, but have all of your, waveforms and viewing tools and all of your markers and all of your whatever in individual categories. So I really think it's a hit or miss, but in totality, do I want the cleaner UI, or do I want the slightly more folded in to folders UI plus the custom buttons? I think I'm going to take the custom buttons, but again, I think it's just a toss-up. But the fact that this is even competing with Atomos or Atomos, whatever you want to say, who is a very reputable recorder and monitor company, says a lot, especially because I think this is one of the first monitors and recorders these guys have put out. So really, really good start. I can't wait to see what's next from them. And honestly, when it comes to the assist and other monitor features, it's very, very close. Didn't really go item by item, but the big things like false color, anamorphic squeeze, frame marker, zoom, focus peaking, all that stuff are present in both, with small differences here and there. Like the zoom assist feature, for example. The Shinobi has, the classic 2 times, 4 times, whatever, and just punches in, punches out. Kind of like the GH6 live view thing. But the Shimball actually has a pinch to zoom, like iPhone sort of thing, which works pretty well as well. So I'm not really sure if I have a preference yet, to be honest, but again, this is going to be totally just a personal preference thing. Do you want to pinch to zoom, which could be you can get a little bit more finer control on how punched in you are? Or do you want to just tap and punch in, tap and punch out? Again, mileage may vary. So with these monitors, yeah, it's pretty much blow for blow with me. They are both really great monitors, but the Shimball has more ports, more custom buttons, and I didn't even mention it in the comparison, but it also has the leg up of being able to record, and the Shinobi does not, which is crazy because, again, the Shimball Memory 1 is $60 less, which could be used to go towards a lot of other things. So yeah, it's kind of like a hybrid between the Ninja and the Shinobi, but for even less money, which is kind of crazy. So again, the recording features are not blow your mind out of this world, but they are handy. And even if you ignore those and just look at this as a solid video monitor, it's still really good. So I think it's a great deal. So anyway, guys, quick wrap up. I think it's a great size. I think the screen's great. The brightness is great. The layout is good. I wouldn't say it's great. I think it's good layout. I like how I'm still getting used to it just because I've had the Shinobi for so long. But some of the stuff it does, I really enjoy. I guess I'll quickly mention one thing that's a little weird, which is you can go into a monochromatic view, which I'm not sure the Shinobi actually does, but I wish the focus peaking did not also turn monochromatic. I think I'll have to write them and let them know that that's one change I'd like to see made, because that's a classic trick of turning the image black and white and then having red focus peaking on for even more accuracy. I'm not sure if that's possible, but they have options and plans for future firmware updates. So this monitor is already great and it's only going up from here. So yeah, I would definitely check this out. I'll put some links to the product pages in the description if you're interested, but I really enjoyed using this on my GH6. I think the 5-inch, 5.5-inch monitors are the perfect size, and I really am looking forward to using this a lot more. To the point where I almost think it's worth selling my Atomos at this point. So I don't know, what do you guys think? Which one do you prefer? I really struggle. I'm probably gonna keep both just for different use cases, or maybe for multi-camera shoots where I've got a second shooter or whatever. But again, it's just crazy to me that this new monitor from a company that hasn't made nearly as many monitors as Atomos is competing with them right out of the gate. So again, well done to the team over there, whoever put this thing together, and I can't wait to see what they come up with next. So anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this video, if you are thinking about buying this monitor, check it out. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll get back to our regularly scheduled content. We've got some fun guests on the podcast coming up with some great lens reviews that I've been working really hard on that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. And If you subscribe, you'll get notified when all that stuff comes out right away, and you can watch it before anybody else, or, you know, at least just get reminded so you can watch it at your leisure. But anyway, guys, thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.